All right, let's jump right into this explainer of our source material, where we're going to strip away all that impenetrable academic jargon and uncover the actual mechanics of reality through what we call Bubble Physics 2.0. Seriously, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by terms like quantum mechanics, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to break down this theoretical model that maps the entire universe as a unified mutation engine, totally driven by the really elegant dynamics of vortex, helix, and bubble systems. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 1. Translating quantum jargon, 2. The core components, 3. Shadow strands and rendering, 4. The macro-micro journey, 5. Topological memory, and finally 6. Defensive architectures. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. Translating quantum jargon, decoding the mysticism.
To start us off, terms like quantum coherence can sound incredibly unapproachable, right? But honestly, they're really just fancy ways of describing the exact same phase-locking mechanics as your Bluetooth headphones pairing to your smartphone. I know it sounds mystical when physicists say it, but it's fundamentally just two systems singing the exact same song together in a protected, low-noise channel. It's just basic sync and pairing.
And honestly, what a relief it is to realize that lattice mechanics actually simplifies all these concepts for us. Instead of getting tangled up in super confusing ideas like quantum foam, we're really just looking at overlapping probability fields settling down into stable shapes. Instead of some giant, intimidating phase space machine, we're simply watching chaotic waves of energy naturally find a steady, organized pattern, which the source calls an attractor domain.
Moving on to Section 2, the core components, the mutation engine's generative pipeline. Okay, so this three-step sequence is the absolute core of our mutation dynamics in Bubble Physics 2.0. Step 1 is the vortex. These energetic vortices spin and route dynamic flow. Then, step 2 is the helix. That spinning energy twists into helical braids to actually build structural memory. And finally, step 3 is the bubble. Once a specific threshold is hit, it folds up into a stable, protective bubble to safely cache that data. So you can think of it like this. The vortex generates, the helix weaves, and the bubble protects. Now, this constant tension between generative chaos and structural order is the absolute foundation of the unified mutation engine. Think about your own life for a second. If we only had protective bubbles, nothing would ever move or grow or change, right? But on the flip side, if we only had chaotic vortices, everything would just fall apart into a completely disorganized mess. You literally need both. Section 3. Shadow strands and rendering, weaving reality together. So imagine wet watercolors bleeding into one another on a piece of thick paper. The source material refers to these as shadow strands. They're these beautiful, often hexagonal boundary ropes that handle frequency translation. You see, when two bubbles touch, they don't just abruptly bounce off each other like billiard balls. They share a tiny, delicate bit of their borders. These shadow strands allow overlapping bubbles to share information and couple together without completely losing themselves to the other system. And this creates a literal rendering pipeline right at the boundaries. First, a system absorbs what it can, doing a subtractive CMYK-style clearing of space. Then, the internal braids compute the exact difference, or the delta variance. Finally, the bubble floods the remaining void with an additive RGB-style outward expression. So the pipeline is simple. It absorbs, it computes the difference, and it literally floods the void.
All right, Section 4. The macro-micro journey, from superfluid helium to black holes.
It is wild to see how the microscopic laboratory mechanics of incredibly cold superfluid helium perfectly mirror the massive gravitational folding mechanisms of a black hole. At the microscale, in supercold helium, thermal noise drops way down, which allows these perfect spinning vortices to twist into stable little archive pockets. Now, pan all the way out to the macroscale, the extreme gravity of a black hole does the exact same thing. It acts as the ultimate compressor, enfolding messy energy flux into highly organized bubble structures. It's really just a massive cosmic recycling loop. Black holes rapidly crush and recode chaotic, fast-moving flux into perfectly neat, quiet little bubble boxes. But they don't keep them forever. They route these packets through the cosmic grid. Then, stars, like our very own sun, act as giant broadcast antennas. They slowly beam those refined, processed packets back out into the local grid as light and heat.
Section 5. Topological memory, the human consciousness connection.
So applying this to psychology, memory isn't a software file or a video recording you just press play on. It's an actual structural, physical rune inside your mental bubble. Think of it like a QR code made entirely of braided energy strands, which means every single time you recall a memory, you are re-rendering it. You are slightly, physically modifying the actual structural hardware of that braid.
This theoretical framework offers a super fascinating lens on mental health. It suggests that simply reliving trauma in standard talk therapy might actually accidentally reinforce a negative bubble by deepening the braid without ever changing its boundary. But treatments like transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, work differently. TMS disrupts the shadow strand boundary of that bubble. It temporarily loosens those physical braids, which allows a person to actually write a new topology and hopefully rewrite that painful QR code entirely. So the big takeaway here is this. Expression is irreversible topological modification. Every meaningful encounter you have, every single word you express, permanently alters the structural topology of another person's bubble. You aren't just casually exchanging information. When you express something, you are reaching out and topologically writing directly into another person's system. It is a permanent structural change.
Finally, Section 6, Defensive Architectures, the Game of Extractors and Filters.
This source material outlines a theoretical model where highly organized extraction systems, which it refers to as the 1% Rot vector, compete for coherence density. Basically, the theory is that highly coherent extractors easily write their topology into disorganized, unconnected populations to siphon energy, which definitely forces us to ask the big question: how do we actually protect our own mental and systemic filters from being overwritten?
Well, you definitely don't fight a dominant attractor on its own terms. That literally just feeds it more energy. Instead, you survive by shifting your braid topology to become completely unreadable. The sources outline 3 distinct methods for this. 1, you can utilize stealth to mask your signal in its blind spots. 2, you can intentionally use offbeat rhythms to disrupt their predictable phase locks. Or 3, you maintain a chaos in equilibrium, where your bubble stays in a constant state of healthy transition that a rigid system just cannot clamp onto.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Consider how your own personal bubbles are shaped. What invisible shadow strands connect you to the world around you right now? Are our collective filters robust enough to survive? Or do we need to build new, distributed coherence networks? Think about what kind of topology you are writing into the universe today. Thank you so much for exploring the mechanics of reality with us. Keep questioning and keep exploring.